Selections from the complete works of Swami Vivekananda. Part 20. The Ideal of a Universal Religion. How it must embrace different types of minds and methods. Section 2. We all hear about the universal brotherhood and how societies stand up especially to preach this. I remember an old story. In India, taking wine is considered very bad. There were two brothers who wished one night to drink wine secretly, and their uncle, who was a very orthodox man, was sleeping in a room quite close to theirs. So, before they began to drink, they said to each other, "We must be very silent, or uncle will wake up." When they were drinking, they continued repeating to each other, "Silence, uncle will wake up," each trying to shout the other down. And as the shouting increased, the uncle woke up, came into the room, and discovered the whole thing. Now we all shout like these drunken men, universal brotherhood. We are all equal. Therefore, let us make a sect. As soon as you make a sect, you protest against equality, and equality is no more. Mohammedans talk of universal brotherhood, but what comes out of that in reality? Why, that anybody who is not a Mohammedan will not be admitted into the brotherhood. He will more likely have his throat cut. Christians talk of universal brotherhood, but anyone who is not a Christian must go to that place where he will be eternally barbecued. And so we go on in this world in our search after universal brotherhood and equality. When you hear such talk in the world, I would ask you to be a little reticent, to take care of yourselves, for behind all this talk is often the intensest selfishness. In the winter, sometimes a thunder cloud comes up, it roars and roars, but it does not rain. But in the rainy season, the clouds speak not, but deluge the world with water. So those who are really workers and really feel at heart the universal brotherhood of man do not talk much, do not make little sect of universal brotherhood. But their acts, their movements, their whole life show out clearly that they, in truth, possess the feeling of brotherhood for mankind, that they have love and sympathy for all. They do not speak, they do and they live. This world is too full of blustering talk. We want a little more earnest work and less talk. So far, we see that it is hard to find any universal features in regard to religion, and yet we know that they exist. We are all human beings, but are we all equal? Certainly not. Who says we are equal? Only the lunatic. Are we all equal in our brains, in our powers, in our bodies? One man is stronger than another. One man has more brain power than another. If we are all equal, why is there this inequality? Who made it? We. Because we have more or less powers, more or less brain, more or less physical strength. It must make a difference between us. Yet we know that the doctrine of equality appeals to our heart. We are all human beings, but some are men and some are women. Here is a black man, there is a white man, but all are men. All belong to one humanity. We are our faces. I see no two alike. Yet we are all human beings. Where is this one humanity? I find a man or a woman either dark or fair, and among all these faces, I know that there is an abstract humanity which is common to all. I may not find it when I try to grasp it, to sense it, and to actualize it. Yet I know for certain that it is there. If I am sure of anything, it is of this humanity which is common to us all. It is through this generalized entity that I see you as a man or a woman. So it is with this universal religion which runs through all the various religions of the world in the form of God. It must and does exist through eternity. I am the thread that runs through all these pearls, and each pearl is a religion or even a sect thereof. Such are the different pearls, and the Lord is the thread that runs through all of them. Only the majority of mankind are entirely unconscious of it. Unity in variety is the plan of the universe. We are all men, and yet we are all distinct from one another. As a part of humanity, I am one with you, and as Mr. So and so, I am different from you. As a man, you are separate from the woman. As a human being, you are one with the woman. As a man, you are separate from the animal, but as a living being, man, woman, animal, and plant are all one, and as existence, you are one with the whole universe. That universal existence is God, the ultimate unity in the universe. In Him, we are all one. At the same time, in manifestation, these differences must always remain. In our work, in our energies, as they are being manifested outside, these differences must always remain. We find then that if by the idea of a universal religion it is meant that one set of doctrine should be believed in by all mankind, it is wholly impossible. It can never be. There can never be a time when all phases will be the same. Again, if we expect that there will be one universal mythology, that is also impossible. It cannot be. Neither can there be one universal ritual. Such a state of things can never come into existence. If it ever did, the world would be destroyed, because variety is the first principle of life. What makes us formed beings? Differentiation. Perfect balance would be our destruction. Suppose the amount of heat in this room, the tendency of which is towards equal and perfect diffusion, gets that kind of diffusion, then for all practical purposes that heat will cease to be. What makes motion possible in this universe? Lost balance. The unity of sameness can come only when this universe is destroyed. Otherwise, such a thing is impossible. Not only so, it would be dangerous to have it. We must not wish that all of us should think alike. There would then be no thought to think. We should all be alike as the Egyptian mummies in a museum, looking at each other without a thought to think. It is this difference, this differentiation, this losing of the balance between us, which is the very soul of our progress, the soul of our all thoughts. This must always be. What then do I mean by the ideal of a universal religion? I do not mean any one universal philosophy or any one universal mythology or any one universal ritual held alike by all. For I know that this world must go on working wheel within wheel, this intricate mass of machinery, most complex, most wonderful. What can we do then? We can make it run smoothly. We can lessen the friction. We can grease the wheels, as it were. How? By recognizing the natural necessity of variation. Just as we have recognized unity by our very nature, so we must also recognize variation. We must learn that truth may be expressed in 100,000 ways and that each of these ways is true as far as it goes. We must learn that the same thing can be viewed from 100 different standpoints and yet be the same thing. Take for instance the sun. Suppose a man standing on the earth looks at the sun when it rises in the morning. He sees a big ball. Suppose he starts on the journey towards the sun and takes a camera with him, taking photographs at every stage of his journey until he reaches the sun. The photographs of each stage will be seen to be different from those of the other stages. In fact, when he gets back, he brings with him so many photographs of so many different suns as it would appear, and yet we know that the same sun was photographed by the man at the different stages of his progress. Even so is it with the Lord. Through high philosophy or low, through the most exalted mythology or the grossest, through the most refined ritualism or arrant fetishism, every sect, every soul, every nation, every religion, consciously or unconsciously, is struggling upward towards God. Every vision of truth that man has is a vision of him and of none else. Suppose we all go with vessels in our hand to fetch water from a lake. One has a cup, another a jar, another a bucket, and so forth. And we all fill our vessels. The water in each case naturally takes the form of the vessel carried by each of us. He who brought the cup has the water in the form of a cup. He who brought the jar, his water is in the shape of a jar, and so forth. But in every case, water and nothing but water is in the vessel. So it is in the case of religion. So, Our minds are like these vessels, and each one of us is trying to arrive at the realization of God. God is like that water filling these different vessels, and in each vessel, the vision of God comes in the form of the vessel. Yet, He is one. He is God in every case. This is the only recognition of universality that we can get. So far, it is all right theoretically, but is there any way of practically working out this harmony in religions? We find that this recognition that all the various views of religion are true has been very, very old. Hundreds of attempts have been made in India, in Alexandria, in Europe, in China, in Japan, in Tibet, and lastly in America to formulate a harmonious religious creed to make all religions come together in love. They have all failed because they did not adopt any practical plan. Many have admitted that all the religions of the world are right, but they show no practical way of bringing them together so as to enable each of them to maintain its own individuality in the conflicts. That plan alone is practical, which does not destroy the individuality of any man in religion, and at the same time shows him a point of union with all others. But so far, all the plans of religious harmony that have been tried while proposing to take in all the various views of religion have in practice tried to bind them all down to a few doctrines and so have produced more new sect fighting, struggling, and pushing against each other. I have also my little plan. I do not know whether it will work or not, and I want to present it to you for discussion. What is my plan? In the first place, I would ask mankind to recognize this maxim: do not destroy. Iconoclastic reformers do no good to the world. Break not, pull not anything down, but build. Help if you can. If you cannot, fold your hands and stand by and see things go on. Do not injure if you cannot render help. Say not a word against any man's convictions so far as they are sincere. Secondly, take man where he stands and from there give him a lift. If it be true that God is the center of all religions and that each of us is moving towards Him along one of these radii, then it is certain that all of us must reach the center. And at that center, where all the radii meet, all our differences will cease. But until we reach there, differences there must be. All these radii converge to the same center. One, according to his nature, travels along one of these lines and another along another. And if we all push onward along our own lines, we shall surely come to the center, because all roads lead to Rome. Each of us is naturally growing and developing according to his own nature. Each will in time come to know the highest truth, for after all, men must teach themselves. What can you and I do? Do you think you can teach even a child? You cannot. The child teaches himself. Your duty is to afford opportunities and to remove obstacles. A plant grows. Do you make the plant grow? Your duty is to put a hedge around it and see that no animal eats up the plant. And there your duty ends. The plant grows of itself. So is it in regard to the spiritual growth of every man. None can teach you. None can make a spiritual man of you. You have to teach yourself. Your growth must come from inside. What can an external teacher do? He can remove the obstructions a little, and there his duty ends. Therefore, help if you can, but do not destroy. Give up all ideas that you can make men spiritual. It is impossible. There is no other teacher to you than your own soul. Recognize this. What comes of it? In society, we see so many different natures. There are thousands and thousands of varieties of minds and inclinations. A thorough generalization of them is impossible. But for our practical purpose, it is sufficient to have them characterized into 4 classes. First, there is the active man, the worker. He wants to work, and there is tremendous energy in his muscles and his nerves. His aim is to work, to build hospitals, do charitable deeds, make streets, to plan and to organize. Then there is the emotional man who loves the sublime and the beautiful to an excessive degree. He loves to think of the beautiful, to enjoy the aesthetic side of nature and adore love and the God of love. He loves with his whole heart and great souls of all times, the prophets of religions and the incarnations of God on earth. He does not care whether reason can or cannot prove that Christ or Buddha existed. He does not care for the exact date when the Sermon on the Mount was preached, or for the exact moment of Krishna's birth. What he cares for is their personalities, their lovable figures, such as his ideal. This is the nature of the lover, the emotional man. Then there is the mystic, whose mind wants to analyze its own self, to understand the workings of the human mind, what the forces are that are working inside, and how to know, manipulate, and obtain control over them. This is the mystical mind. Then there is the philosopher, who wants to weigh everything and use his intellect even beyond the possibilities of all human philosophy.